Give us a sense of what changed on you. It looked like you had it under control, now not so much. What came up that surprised you?
Well, David, we were the first state in the United States to issue that stay at home order, and we definitely flattened our curve. Then we were one of the first places to start reopening, recognizing that the impact to the economy was very serious. People needed to get back to work. So we dialed it open. And the governor has always talked about our
Lieutenant-
reopening switch, that if the numbers start to go up, and we knew that they would, but if they went up beyond what we predicted, we would have to dial back down again. So that's where we are right now. And to give you a little bit of context, because California has been testing widely, we're testing now around 100,000 people every single day. Our rate went from a stable 4.5% over the time of the stay-at-home order. So about 4.5% of people tested positive. In a very quick 3 weeks to 7.5%. So the virus has gone too far beyond what we believe is safe. So now we are dialing things back and telling people again, you have to stay at home until we can get it back under control and flatten that curve again.
Lieutenant Governor, you have a very big state in terms of number of people, in terms of the size of the economy, and geographically. Are you seeing significant variances across the state? Because initially it seemed like San Francisco was the hotspot, and then it moved south on you. Are you seeing that sort of positivity rate throughout the state, or are there particular hotspots?
Well, David, you're absolutely right. And for your viewers on the East Coast, you have to imagine an area from Virginia to Vermont. And very, very diverse. California is a huge state, geographically and in terms of our population. That's why the state is working closely with our counties. So we set protocols at the state level, and every county modifies and works within the envelope of those protocols to fine-tune what's right. But now we have about 30 counties on our watch list, places where the virus has really come roaring back. San Diego, Los Angeles, Imperial County are among them, so slightly higher in Southern California than in the north. But again, we know what works, David, and it's painful economically. But we know that when people stay home, and most importantly, when we adhere to those protocols of wearing a mask, washing our hands, and social distancing, we can bring it back down under control. The other thing that's different than several months ago is we use the time that we bought with our original stay-at-home order to expand our capacity in our hospitals, PPE, ventilators. We also have a robust biotech industry in California. Remdesivir, which I'm sure you've heard about, is a therapy that was developed here in California. So we have ways to treat people to make it that if you do get the virus, you're more likely to survive. So all of that is an important part of the process. At the same time, we have to dial it back, keep people at home, really reinforce the message of how to keep safe. And frankly, this mask debate and the idea that if you're conservative, you don't want to wear one, and if you're a progressive, you do. This is nonsense. Masks are proving to be the most effective way that we can slow the virus down. So we're doing a lot of PSA, a lot of public service announcement to people to really reinforce how important it is to follow those basic protocols: the mask, social distancing, and hand washing.
So you point to a really important point. You and Governor Newsom can set all the rules you want, but if people don't comply, it's not going to work as a practical matter. To what extent are you having trouble with compliance? Either we have some issues in the country about age, particularly 20 to 29-year-olds seem to be identified in some parts of the country, or also, as you said, sort of the civil rights and liberties. I have a right not to wear a mask. How are you dealing with those issues in California?
You know, we are a pretty science-based state, and I think that we don't want to be too hard, particularly on young people, because I think to some degree it's hard to understand this virus because the science is still a little murky on how it's transmitted, why some people get more sick than others. So what we're doing is we're ramping up our education and really trying to help young people in particular, but everybody understand how important these protocols are. So that is our approach, is education, getting the science out there. And yes, to the degree that we need to use tools for enforcement, that if businesses are operating in a way that's unsafe, we'll do something about it. But that is not the preferred approach.
I have no doubt that your priority, as Governor Newsom's, is the health and the well-being of the citizens of California. At the same time, as you mentioned, there are economic consequences to all this, and California is an important part of the U.S. economy, an important part of the growth of the U.S. economy. What is this dialing back going to do to the California economy and your growth and your employment?
So California, going into this crisis, had a budget surplus. We had a rainy day fund that was the biggest it ever been. Those things are helping us to get through it. Nevertheless, we have a pretty significant budget deficit, and we are continuing to call for more federal aid. That federal aid will allow us to be able to close the gap and in particular avoid some pretty significant cuts to education. So we are calling very loudly for more federal aid. And I'll also say that we're calling for aid for our cities. California has a very important part of our economy is our tourism industry. And obviously, tourism is being hit very hard. So we are hoping for additional federal funds to make up for the fact that we're not going to have those hotel tax funds coming into our cities. The other thing, and again, your viewers are really focused, I know, on the economic consequences. The unemployment insurance average for people in California is about $350 a week prior to federal aid. So if people prior to COVID filed for unemployment, they were eligible for up to $450 a week, but the average was about $350. Very difficult to live on that. The CARES Act brought an additional $600 a week to people on unemployment insurance. That is a very, very significant difference, and those supplemental funds are set to run out at the end of this month. California has 6.2 million people who are collecting unemployment insurance right now. That is going to have a very significant impact on how our families are able to survive these very high, unprecedentedly high levels of unemployment. So again, calling for additional aid from the federal government is a very important part of our message here in California, and we really hope that they're going to respond the right way.
And finally, Lieutenant Governor, you make a very important connection there. Insofar as we have to dial back in some places like California, that will extend some of the unemployment. And so it means those benefits are going to have to go longer, perhaps, than we thought when we first did it as a patchwork matter.
David, that's exactly right. So, this is a message that's important for me to get out. Our leaders in California have been trying to get this message. We have a robust delegation from California in Congress, headed up by Speaker Nancy Pelosi. I know she's fighting for more. But this is the Sunshine State. We are optimistic. We know we will get through it. We know that all the things that made our economy strong, our innovation, Silicon Valley, we're number one in manufacturing. These things will come back. But the more that the federal government is willing to step up and help us get through this unprecedented time, the better that we're going to be able to come back stronger when we do get through this, and we will.